We have been discussing about the evolution of management thought, and we saw the different stages in management thought, wherein we saw the classical theory of management and the neoclassical theory, and we also have the modern management theories. Now, we've already discussed under the classical theory, we've discussed the process management or administrative management, and then we also discussed the scientific management and the bureaucratic management. And with regards to the neoclassical theory, we talked about the human relations movement. Mostly we talked about Eldon Mayo and his Hawthorne studies, as well as about the theory provided to us by Mary Parker Follett. And then we also talked about behavioral sciences movement, wherein we discussed a few of the theories that have been provided by Abraham Maslow, his need hierarchy, and then Douglas McGregor, the XY theory, and also the theory provided by Chester I. Bernard. So today we're moving on and we are going to be discussing about the modern management theories. So when talking about the modern management theories, basically in the modern management theory, the streams of thinking have been noticed even since the 1960s, even since the neoclassical thought. We were already having these new kinds of management theories, which are going to be referred to as the modern management theories. So under the modern management theories, we're going to be discussing three kinds of approaches or three kinds of theories. Firstly, the quantitative approach. Secondly, the systems approach, and thirdly, the contingency approach. Okay, so firstly, let's look into the first approach known as the quantitative approach. Now, the quantitative approach is also termed as the mathematical approach or the mathematics approach. So as we know, mathematics has forced its way into all disciplines, right? So initially, when we were talking about accounts, we were mostly just concentrating upon bookkeeping. But now even mathematics has been adopted. The application of mathematics is also required, even in case of accounting. So it has been universally recognized as an important tool of analysis and also as a language for precise expression of concept and relationship. So when it comes to even our theoretical papers also, in fact, even management also requires the application of mathematics, not pure mathematics, but it's an application of mathematics. Okay, so the mathematical theorists, they called themselves as management scientists, and they believe that all the functions of management, your planning, organizing, staffing, directing, all of these functions of management, they require logical processes, and the management functions, they believe, can be expressed in mathematical symbols as well as relationships. Okay, so according to them, with the help of various models, problems can be expressed in terms of basic relationships by using certain models, by using charts, by using drawings, by using tables. They believe that we can express even management functions, even management problems in the form of mathematical relationships. Okay, so with the help of models, problems can be expressed in terms of basic relationships, and where a given goal is sought, when you have a goal to achieve, the model can often be expressed in terms of suggesting a decision as to how things can be done. Mostly, when we're talking about the mathematical approach, it's mostly using flowcharts. Okay, mostly we're using charts which say that is this a problem? If it's yes, move to this direction. If it's no, move to that direction. And then if you have followed yes, then they'll say, is it the next question? They'll give you another set of questions and you'll reply yes or no. And based on that, you'll be able to solve your problems. Okay, that is how the quantitative approach worked. So this particular approach, it gained momentum during and after the Second World War. Why? Because during this phase, the scientists were expected to develop models which would help to make optimal decisions about the development of military resources and to solve military problems. Okay, so during these days, because of the military problems and all that, the scientists were expected to solve very hard problems. So they started using mathematics in order to make their decision taking a little easier. So mathematical school of thought can be traced back to scientific management of F.W. Taylor himself and his associates also, who suggested that it was necessary in order to have a scientific study of work in order to ensure the management is capable of achieving the task, and also in order to ensure the management will be able to allocate the work on among the employees. So this particular approach is mainly concerned with problem solving, and it also quite uses various tools in order to achieve the problems. Okay, so let's just look quickly into a few of the features of quantitative approach. So firstly, This approach is mainly concerned with problem solving, and it uses mathematical tools to solve them. As we've seen already, in case of the quantitative approach, it is also called as mathematical approach. Okay, so it uses mathematical tools. And then mathematical models can be developed by quantifying various variables in the problem. So according to them, in order to develop a mathematical model, the qualitative products should be quantifiable. That is, those that are measured in terms of quality. Good, bad should be given numbers. If it's good, give it a rating of 5. If it's bad, give it a rating of 1, something like that, okay? And then mathematical tools can be used to describe managerial problems. So it is saying that, mathematical symbols can be used to describe managerial problems. If it's good, maybe you can give them a plus sign. If it's bad, give it a negative sign. And the next point is that mathematical tools, operations research, simulation, and model building are also used to find out solutions to managerial problems. So besides addition, subtraction, and all of the other tools, you can also use simulation, or you can even use model building to create, in order to help you to find these solutions easily to your managerial problems. So those were the features. Now let's just look into a few of the disadvantages of this particular model. Now, of course, there is no denying the fact that mathematical models are increasingly used in taking important decisions. However, even though we're using mathematical decisions, even though we are concentrating upon numbers, yet numbers cannot be a substitute for sound judgment. Okay, just like if you are studying the stock of a company may be increasing, but you have to look at the market also. Okay, so if the market is falling right now, then the value of your stocks will definitely plummet. Okay, the value will come down. So they're saying that not just look at numbers, but also think yourself also. Okay, give sound judgment. So mathematical approach often leads us to believe that complex management problems involving people and other resources can be reduced to formulae of mathematical models, which is not a correct approach. Why? Because humans cannot be made a part of an equation. Okay, it's quite difficult for you to measure the amount of work a person does in terms of numbers. So this approach suffers from a number of drawbacks. So firstly, the first drawback is that this approach does not give weightage to human element, which is very important in every organization. So as we've said earlier, it is mostly concentrating upon how to solve problems by using numbers. It doesn't concern itself with whether the humans like it, whether the humans in the organization are worth it or not. Okay, so it does not give weightage, it does not respect the human element, which is very important. And then secondly, making a model often takes time. So if you want to solve a problem, you cannot draw a full chart. Sometimes drawing one full chart may take a few days. So managers often have to take quick decisions in real life without waiting for full information and developing models. But the mathematical approach or the quantitative approach suffers from that drawback as well. And thirdly, this approach, it works upon the assumption that all the variables regarding decision making are measurable and interdependent. So this approach believes that all of those variables that are there with regards to decision making are interdependent upon each other. Okay, that they're relating to each other and that they can actually be measured in terms of money or in terms of numbers. However, most often it is not like that. Okay, and next you have the data available in the business may not always be up to date, and this may lead to wrong decision making. Now, this is the worst. This is the worst situation. Mostly when we are recording data, when we are recording the books of accounts also, we record them based upon historical data. Okay, we record them based upon the historical transactions or the original values sometimes. So this may often lead to wrong decisions. Or maybe when you want to take a decision, you haven't updated your data, you haven't checked about how the market has changed or how the value of that particular stock has changed or how the value of the products have changed. So this may often lead to wrong decision making. Okay, so these are your disadvantages of the quantitative approach. And the next approach, as we've seen, is the systems approach. So by the 1960s, a new approach to management came into the picture. And this approach basically tried to unify the earlier schools of thought, your classical, your neoclassical. And it is essentially a way of thinking about organizations and management problems. So they try to keep in mind the organizations as well as the problems that are faced by the organizations or the management. And when we're talking about the systems approach, this approach views an organization as interrelated parts with a unified purpose. So it sees the organization as one body which has different parts, and all of these different parts are working together for one purpose. Okay, so imagine the organization as one human body. A human body has arms and legs, right? So if you're hungry and if you want to eat, the goal is to eat. Your purpose is to eat because you're hungry. So what will help you to eat? Your hands will help you, and then your mouth, your teeth, all of these are going to work together for the purpose of achieving your goal, which is to feed yourself. Okay, so that is how the systems approach views the organization also. And the system theory, it looks at the organization as a whole, examining all relevant organizational variables simultaneously. So the term system, it refers to a set of principles or procedures according to which something is going to be done. So it is basically an organized scheme or even a method which describes how things are supposed to be done. So Chester Bernard was the first to see management in the context of a system. Remember Chester I. Bernard? We learned about him under Neoclassical School. Okay, so the other contributors include Kenneth Boulding, Johnson, and so on. Okay? So the main thrust or the main idea of this approach is upon the interdependence and also interrelatedness of various subsystems. So they believe that the systems approach believes that even though the organization is one and the departments belong to the organization, yet they are depending upon each other, and yet they are not depending upon each other at the same time. Okay, so they are depending upon each other, they have interdependence, and they are also related to each other, not just the organization, but they're related to each other. How one hand can help the other hand, one leg will help the other leg, right? So they're not just functioning for the sake of the organization, they were also functioning for the sake of each other. And then according to the traditional approach, every function of management was viewed separately, right? In case of the traditional approach, the various functions of management, planning was supposed to be only for the heads or for your top level management, and then organizing was somewhere for the heads and for the sub level. Okay, so when it comes to the systems approach, the whole organization is viewed as a system. So basically all of the functions of management are going to be working, or they're going to be relating to each other. So basically in a business, the departments are thought of as subsystems, like your departments like production, and then sales, advertising, marketing, all of these are said to be subsystems, whereas the business is going to be one system. So it's basically like you have one college, and under the college you have various departments. Okay, so that is how the systems approach looks at an organization. So therefore, one system may consist of many subsystems, which should further be divided into many more subsystems. Alright, so that is your systems approach. Let's look a little into the features of your systems approach. The first feature that we see there is that the systems approach is an open system. So the traditional approach treated the organization as a closed system, whereas the systems approach treats the organization as an open system. So in an open system, there will be continuous interaction between the environment as well as the business. So the organization is said to be linked to the environment, and as such, the organizational effectiveness will depend upon the organization and the interaction with its environment. So in case of the systems approach, because it's an open system, there's open interaction between the management and the organization and the environment, sorry. So because of that, any changes in the environment would affect the organization also. Secondly, adaptive behavior. So the environment is going to be continuously changing, and the organization, because it is linked to the environment, should also adjust to the changing environment. So therefore, changes in the organization will be reflected in the subsystems as well. Remember, in case of systems approach, we said the organization is one, and all those departments under that also will function as how the organization is functioning. Okay, so any changes that are made to your organization due to the environmental changes will also affect the subsystems, because they have to meet any challenges in the environment. So it considers the impact of both near and distant future on organization activities. So for this purpose, there is a provision of feedback and also a chance for the management to evaluate its performance and to take corrective measures. Third point, organization is a whole. So the organization is seen as a whole. It's not seen as fragments, it's not seen as parts, but it's seen as one whole itself, which means that it is bigger than the subsystems combined. So in order to ensure effectiveness, the emphasis is laid on integration in the various subsystems in order to ensure that the work is that the organization is effective, the work is being carried out effectively, and also economically. The emphasis is laid upon integration, that is to ensure that all the subsystems are working together towards the achievement of organizational goals. So integration of goals maintains equilibrium or balance and enables the organizations to grow in the dynamic environment. And the fourth point, you have subsystems. So as you've seen earlier already, the organization is one. Under that, you can have various other subsystems. So the organization will consist of various subsystems, and these subsystems are interdependent upon each other. They depend upon each other, and as a result, they have to interact with each other. They will be linked through goals, authority flow, resources flow, and so on and so forth. And the next point, you have boundaries. The organization is going to provide a boundary which separates it from other systems. So it determines which parts are internal or which parts belong to the external environment. Okay, so for example, the employees in the organization are within the boundaries of the organization. Therefore, they belong to the internal environment, whereas the customers are outside the boundaries, and as a result, they belong to the external environment. And finally, systems approach is a multidisciplinary approach. So this approach is enriched by contributions from various disciplines like psychology, sociology, mathematics, economics, and so on. That's why it is termed as a multidisciplinary approach. Next, what are the uses of the systems approach? So the system approach, it helps in studying the functions of complex organizations, and it has been utilized as the base for the new kind of organization like project management organization. It basically helps to bring out the interrelations in the various management functions. So the systems approach, it examines the interrelationship and interdependency among various parts of the organization. And its emphasis is basically on the working and efficiency of subsystems for the survival and growth of the organization. Now, the organization is going to be studied as a whole and not through its parts. So this basically increases the ability of the organization to adapt to the environmental changes, okay, because it's studied as a whole and not in parts. So if there's any change in the organization, if there's any change in the environment, the whole organization has to change. And as a result, all of those subsystems also have to change accordingly. So the systems approach, it provides a framework for effective interaction of parts of the organization in a specific arrangement for the attainment of goals, and it does not focus on only one part of the organization. Okay, it focuses on the organization as a whole. Therefore, all of those subsystems are part of the organization, so they all get equal focus. Now, let's look at a few of the limitations of this approach. So this approach is said to be vague and abstract. Okay, basically it means it's just an idea. It's good on paper, but cannot be practiced. It cannot be easily applied to practical situations. And critics claim that this is a theoretical approach to management. Okay, as we've seen earlier, as you said earlier, this is only applicable on paper and cannot exactly be applied. Okay, that's why critics say it is a theoretical approach to management. So the way an organization works and solves problems has no appeal in theory itself. We need to know how to do the work, and we also need the work to get done, actually, not just on paper but in real life. So this approach is not very much suitable. So the relationship amongst the parts of the organization is emphasized upon, but the exact nature of interdependence is not defined. We know that the different parts of the organization are related to each other, they should work with each other, but to what extent should they be interdependent upon each other? To what extent should they rely upon each other? Now, at the same time, also the exact relationship between the internal and external environment of the organization also is not defined. So it also fails to provide concepts that apply to all types of organizations. The small organizations are less adaptive to environmental variables than large organizations. And this theory basically assumes that most of the organizations are big, complex, and open system. Because of that, it fails to provide a unified theory. Okay, mostly because there are different types of organizations, and this theory is only applicable towards the large organizations. Therefore, this is a huge limitation on the approach. And next, we have the contingency approach. So you've seen the mathematical approach, you've seen the systems approach. Now, the final approach that we have under the modern theory is the contingency approach. It is also known as the situational approach. Now, this theory, this approach was developed by J.W. Lorsch and P.R. Lawrence in 1970s. They came up with a theory because they were critical of other approaches which believe in one best way to manage. They did not believe that there was only one method of managing. Now, according to them, management problems are different, right? And they are based upon different situations. Therefore, they need to be tackled as per the demands of the situation. It's not possible that one problem can be solved in one way itself, right? In case you have to find the sum total of, let's say, you have to find numbers that are equal to 4. So in order to find a total that's going to be numbers that could add up to 4, you could take maybe 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, right? That'll be equal to 4. Or you could take 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. Or you can take 1 plus 3 is equal to 4. There are different ways to find a solution. Therefore, what they're saying is that because there are different ways to solve there are different situations, so there should also be different methods in order to tackle the situation depending upon the demands of the situation. And as a result of that, the one best way of doing something or the one best way of solving problems, it may be useful for repetitive things, but not for managerial problems. It can be used for problems that are that happen over and over again, but they cannot be used towards our managerial problems, because managerial problems keep on changing depending upon the situation, depending upon the environment. Okay, so according to the contingency approach, the managers will generally pay attention to the current situations, and then they will make strategies based upon their own knowledge and experience. So it's basically taking into consideration these situations. They'll have to research the past and also use their knowledge, their experience, their skills. So this approach is quite advantageous to organizations as it allows them to learn from specific circumstances and also change their policies accordingly in the future if the same situation arises, because they're capable of doing research. Okay, so this is very much useful. So this means that leaders themselves have to adjust their working styles and management strategies based upon the needs of their co-workers and the organization. Fine. So when it comes to the contingency approach or situational approach, it is based upon the situation. Based upon the emergency, they can change their approach depending upon the problem that they have to face. So what are the features of the contingency approach? The contingency approach, it focuses on the variable nature of businesses and organizations, and the managers choose a framework for finding solutions to a problem rather than sticking to a particular strategy for solving the problems. The managers can choose the different methods to solve a problem themselves rather than picking a solution out of the books. Okay, so this allows an organization to work under differentiable environmental conditions and circumstances. So this particular approach, it allows the organization to adjust and to adapt to different situations. And this approach generally depends upon the complexity of the problem, and it clearly depicts that management is circumstantial. There will be no universal principles of management, and there will not be one best way of doing a job or of managing the particular work. So according to this situation, as we've said earlier, different situations will have different solutions, and no one can pre-declare, no one can say in advance how things will happen. Okay, and the next point you have, it is also called the if-then approach to management. If this happens, then we'll do that. If A happens, then we can go to this solution, or if B happens, then we can offer that solution. Okay, so it is also called as the if-then approach. So if the if section, it represents the independent variable or the particular problem or the situation, and the then part is a representation of the action to be taken accordingly. If it rains, we'll carry an umbrella. If it doesn't rain, we'll carry an ice cream. Okay, basically that is your if-then approach. And the fourth point is that the contingency theory, it depends upon both the internal as well as external factors of an organization. So it depends upon various aspects like the size of the organization, then the leadership approaches of your managers, then the number of employees, number of managers, customers' perspectives, needs and wants of the customers, the competition in the market, and so on. Fine. These are the features of your contingency approach. Now let's look at the pros and cons of your contingency approach. Firstly, let's talk about the advantages. Now, because of the profitable nature that this theory has, it has been of great use to the managers. It is a very good approach to management. So this approach is adaptive in nature, right? As you've seen, it depends upon the situation. If this happens, then that. So they adapt to the situation. So it allows the organization to stay flexible and transform the policies and strategies according to the changing environment. Second point, the managers can consider the entire factor, they can analyze the situations thoroughly, and then they can take the appropriate decisions. This means that they can consider every factor, variable, every problem that is there and all the circumstances. And based on that, they can take the decisions, and they can also decide whether or not they can also keep in mind that this may affect the solutions in the present as well as in the future. And finally, due to this approach, the scope of leadership has widened. This approach, it gives importance to managers' understanding, knowledge, as well as leadership styles in various contexts. And it does not expect that all leaders are going to be efficient in dealing with all types of situations in an organization. Maybe one leader will be able to deal with it in one way, another leader will deal with the situation in another way. Okay, so it has increased, it has widened the scope of leadership. And then you have disadvantages. Now, despite the various great advantages the theory has to offer, it is not free from criticisms. Nothing is free from criticisms. Every positive will always have a negative. So the disadvantages, you can see the first point. There is no single optimal solution to a problem, which means that managers can iterate as much as they want in search of solutions. So this often leads to wastage of time, resources, and money. As we said earlier, if-then approach, right? If this doesn't happen, then we'll do that. But what if that happens? Then what will we do? So there are so many there are so many solutions that you can take to one problem. And because of that, the managers are often just deliberating. Should we do this? Should we do that? This is also a solution. That is also a solution. As a result, it leads to wastage of time and the money as well as other resources. And the second point, the contingency approach is quite straightforward, that not all of the management situations can be dealt with in a single way. But when we apply the same in real life situations, things often do get a little complex. So it will require a thorough analysis, and also a number of factors need to be considered for every problem that arises. Therefore, in case of stringent time limits, managers may not be able to dig deeper into the situation, and they might take superficial decisions. Because there is no single way of doing things, they have to always go into research in order to study how to do the things over and over again. Okay, third point, it is not always feasible for the managers to consider each and every factor to determine all the variables involved in decision making. Again, this is just repetition of the first point because there's no single optimal solution. So they have to waste a lot of time, they have to waste a lot of money and resources in order to carry out the work. And fourth point, the approach might be complex to implement as it is not fixed and it is situational. Therefore, it is dependent on how the leaders adjust themselves and their perspectives for the betterment of the company. And the more time the leaders spend with their subordinates and understand their issues and problems, the easier it will be for them to make the decisions when it comes to the contingency approach. Okay, so these are the advantages and disadvantages of the contingency approach. So with that, we have discussed all of the schools of management thought and the evolution. We have discussed the evolution of management thought. We've seen the classical theory, and then we've seen the neoclassical theory, and now we have also seen the modern management theories. So moving on, next we're going to be discussing about the schools of management thought. So as we've seen, management is ages old, right? It has been in the picture since the very ancient days, and as a result of that, management has grown over the years, and the number of people who are writing, who are talking about the management is also growing considerably. As a result, the literature in management has also grown considerably. Okay, so the process of management has been studied by the scholars from different disciplines, including the scientific approach. They've studied psychological, physiological, sociological, all right? So they have given different theories depending upon their discipline and their specialization. So the various approaches to the study of management, as has been propounded by specialists from different disciplines, have come to be called as schools of management thought, because there are different schools that provide you different thoughts. Okay, so you can have these various schools of thought. Firstly, management process school. Secondly, the empirical school. Thirdly, the human behavior school. Fourthly, the social system school. And finally, the decision theory school. So firstly, let's look into the Management Process School, what it is and what are the different features that it will have. So firstly, the Management Process School. Now, when we're talking about the Management Process School, Henry Fayol is known as the father of this school. Okay, Henry Fayol is the father of this school of thought, and you can have other contributors, J.D. Mooney, A.C. Rayleigh, Lyndall Urwick, Harold Kuhns, Newman, Summers, and Macfarlane. Okay, these are the other contributors. According to this particular school of thought, management is best studied in terms of the process that it involves. So all these different steps that is involved in the carrying out of management, that is the best way to study management, they say. So management process has been divided into 5 broad functions, as you've already seen: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. So this school of thought seeks to analyze the nature, purpose, structure, and also the underlying process of each of these different functions. So the school involved some universal principles of management, which could be applied to business, government, and also any other type of organization in the world. So the management process approach, it recognizes management as a separate discipline altogether, and it tries to integrate the knowledge of other disciplines to improve management. In fact, in case of the management process school, there is no room for innovation, research, or even development. Okay, so let's look at the limitations. The school is criticized on the ground that under dynamic conditions, it may not be worthwhile to find out principles of universal application. So when it comes to dynamic conditions, when there's a constant change in conditions, it is quite difficult to use this particular school of thought. There is a lack of unanimity among theorists as well about the functions of management. Even the modern management process school theorists, they are unable to come to a mutual consensus. They are unable to figure out which are the actual functions of management. So the principles of management do not always stand the test of empirical scrutiny. They are incapable of standing up to research. And next, you have the empirical school. Now, the main contributors to this school of thought are the Harvard Business School. Then you have Ernest Dale, you have Mooney, Urwick, Rayleigh. And this school of thought considers management as a study of experience. And by studying experiences of people, they are how people are managing their business using the experiences. Okay, so the thinking is based on the belief that the study of the actual situation where there is success, only in situations where there is success, will help the students and practitioners, that is other businessmen, to know how to manage effectively in similar situations. So basically they assume that by studying the success stories of other businessmen, they will be able to also manage their business successfully. So the knowledge will help managers to take decisions in different situations. And the basic assumption is that the actual business situation contributes to the development of managerial skills. When you're working in a business, that will lead you to improve your managerial skills. And the limitations you have, this school of thought depends heavily on historical methods of study. They depend upon research. So it goes mainly by precedents, and it does not realize that a manager has to work under dynamic conditions and that history does not always repeat itself exactly. They study, as I've said, they study the success stories of past managers, and they try to use those same skills to apply to the organization. However, one thing to be remembered is that management problems will not always repeat itself over and over again. Even if they do repeat, it'll be in a different context. So the situations in the past may not be the same in the present or even in the future. Therefore, this technique may be useful or even dangerous. It can be useful if the situations are the same, but dangerous when the situations are different. So because again, what happens in the past may not offer a solution for an uncertain future. There's always a big risk when you're adopting this particular theories under the empirical school. And the experiences are only useful to determine the reasons for successes or failures. And the third school of thought you have is your human behaviors. The third school of thought we have is the human behavior school. Now, the main contributors for this school of thought are your propagators of the neoclassical, the human relations approach. So the main contributors are Elton Mayo, and then Ruthless Berger, McGregor, Keith Davis. Okay, so this school has also benefited from the contributions of psychologists like Maslow, Argyris, Herzberg, and so on. And this school has its origins in the Hawthorne tests or experiments that were conducted by Elton Mayo and his associates. Okay, we are deriving the tools and all the approaches for this human behavior school from the Hawthorne experiments. And these studies, they brought out for the first time the important relationships between the social factors and also productivity, how important human relations are towards their work. So this school of thought, it concentrates on the human aspect of management and the belief that when people work together to achieve objectives, people should understand people. Okay, according to this school of thought, people should understand people best. So your colleagues, your co-workers, your friends are the ones who will understand your situation, and as a result of that, they'll help you to overcome your problems. So the relationship among people are the cementing force that binds them together to accomplish common objectives. And the studies, the Hawthorne studies, basically highlighted the relationship between social factors as well as productivity, how important friends our community is towards the production. It was realized that for the first time that productivity depended heavily upon the satisfaction of the employees in the work situation. They also believed that the effectiveness in an organization depended upon the quality of relations among the people who are working within the organization. So let's look at the limitations of this approach. This approach, it talks about organization and organizational behavior in vague terms. They're not very clear about what an organization is and what are the behaviors that should be existing within the organization. Secondly, if the study of management were to be confined to human behavior or human relations, it would be unduly restricting the scope of technical aspects of the job, which are also equally important. So we cannot concentrate only upon humans, but we have to also concentrate upon their skills, right? We also have to concentrate upon the other aspects, upon the technology that is there also, because that is also equally important. There are also resources to a organization. And then the fourth school of thought you have is the social system school. Now, this school of thought is said to be closely linked to the human behavior school of thought, because social, right, we're talking about society, and human behavior school studies the behavior of the people in the organization. Now, in the social system school, the organization is considered as a social system which will consist of various groups of people. It is mainly concerned with the behavior of people in groups, and therefore it tends to be based upon sociology and social psychology rather than on individual psychology. In case of the human behavior, we studied how and one individual's behavior affects other people's behavior. Whereas in case of social system, we're studying how a group's behavior affects the organization, or a group's behavior affects the other groups. Now, the founding father of this school of thought is Chester Bernard. He viewed the organization as a cooperative system involving cooperation among the number of groups. And if the groups do not cooperate in pursuit of achieving common objectives, then the effectiveness of the organization will be jeopardized. He believes that everybody should work together as a group. And this school, it recognizes both formal and informal organizations, just like how we were talking in case of Chester Bernard's theory. He introduced the term formal organization and informal organization. As a result, it brings together the classic as well as the human relations schools. And it recognizes also the interdependency of relations, social interactions, and also joint goals which are set by the system. The main contribution of this school of thought is its focus on cultural factors in the working of the organization. So people working together in groups will have their own norms and values which have a bearing on the contribution. Just like in case of a classroom also, you'll have your own set of friends, and the action of that particular group will affect sometimes the action of the entire organization or the action of the other groups. Okay, so limitations of this school of thought. The school of thought is very useful for practicing managers. Okay, all the managers will operate in a social system, and the organization is likely to prosper mostly if the social demands of the society in which it operates are fully recognized. Okay, so this school of thought, it presents too broad a field of study for management, because studying humans is not very easy. Now, especially if you have to study their sociology, their psychology, it's going to be quite difficult. It becomes very wide for you to study. And it overlooks many managerial concepts, principles, and techniques that are quite important for managers. And it attaches maximum importance to the study of sociology. Therefore, it tends to overlook many management concepts, principles, techniques. Okay? And then it does not lay proper emphasis on technological factors which are connected with the psychological behavior of the people. It's concentrating only upon the behavior of people and not how everything else affects the behavior of the people. And the last school of thought we're learning about is the decision theory school. And again, the main contributors of this theory are Chester Bernard, James March, Herbert Simon, Forrester, and Richard Sire. According to this school, the essence of management lies in decision making. From the name itself, decision theory. So the main purpose of management, according to them, is decision making. And whatever a manager does is the outcome of a decision which has been made by him through rational choice from among different alternatives available to him. Now, the decision theory school, it concentrates its attention on decision making, and it treats various aspects of decision making as constituting the scope of the study of management. So all of those aspects relating to decision making are said to be part of a study of management or part of the duties of a manager. Now, of course, decisions are important for the formulation of policies, but not just decisions, right? You also have to take action. So this could be one of the limitations. Now, additionally, scientific approach of decision making is also emphasized by this school, and the decision should be taken at the right time, and it should be related to the environment or the situation. At the same time, it should be feasible in a given situation. That is, it should be appropriate. It should not be too expensive. Neither should it be too time consuming. Okay, so decisions have to be made keeping in mind the time and the situation. All right, and then management is essentially decision making, as we know, and the members of an organization are essentially decision makers and problem solvers. Therefore, management is the study of process of decision making and the personalities of the decision makers. That is the basic concept of the decision theory school. Now, limitations of the decision theory school. Though decision making is very important for effective management, decision making cannot be treated as an independent function. You cannot decide, you cannot only spend time upon decisions, deciding what to do, when to do, how to do. It is only one of the tasks that the executives perform. They have various tasks, and this is just one among them. Okay, so decision making sometimes may take only a small fraction of time of the executives. So decision making appears to be a narrow focus to build a total theory of management, because sometimes in order to make a decision, yes or no, to answer a problem like that, doesn't take too much time sometimes, right? So because of that, to have a separate school of thought, it seems quite overbearing. Okay, so this school contributes a lot towards the sharpening of managerial tools, especially for making suitable decisions in the organization. But the question still remains, can it do justice to the other aspects of management? Right? What about the other functions of management? Organizing, staffing, directing, why do they not get other schools by themselves? So all of these other functions, though they are included in the decision making, yet the most important aspect that the decision theory school is trying to promote is that of making decisions, yes or no. Okay, it doesn't consider a lot of other situations. That is why this is another limitation of your decision theory school. Okay, so these are the 5 schools of management thought.